What are feelings? Before human beings had any awareness of themselves as individual bodies on the earth, there was no such thing as personal feelings because, as discussed in the section on memory, the primitive human animal didn't have any notion of the personal. The nature of feeling good or bad, and every other feeling or sensation in between, is a function of the ability that we now have to identify with the powerful and subtle movements of energy within and throughout our bodies. However, if the primitive humans were able to identify with these movements of energy at the time, then they would have reported the sensation of feeling good as their natural state of being. Another word for this natural state of feeling good is well-being. Well-being is the registration of energy moving through the whole body uninterrupted by any interference from the self, and identification with this movement makes a person want to say things like, "I feel good," "Life is good," or any uplifting, life-affirming version of this. There are many words that can be used to help describe or point you to this natural sensation of well-being in your body. They include, but are by no means limited to, a sense of ease, peace, fulfillment, confidence, strength, joy, or belonging. And if all the animals on Earth today could identify with this sensation, as we can, and express the feeling in words, they would describe it in similar terms. But it does not need identification or description in words for it to be true and effective. The bird that sings in the tree, or the baby that gurgles away in the cot, are fine examples of a body expressing the natural sensation of well-being within it. Well-being is the natural feeling and ground state of consciousness operating in and as the body. It is from this place, this sensation, that all the creatures are moved, and life on earth is orchestrated perfectly as one eternal play of consciousness. However, with the presence of and interference from the self in this otherwise natural operating system, other feelings begin to arise. Self or ego is an energy field that pulls upon and distorts these natural sensations. From this arises an entirely new dimension of feeling, and it is called emotion. Here we have arrived at a cornerstone in this teaching, to make the distinction and explain the fundamental difference between natural sensation and emotion, because it is these forces that move you through your daily life and affect the nature of the experiences you have. We will now look at the differences in greater detail, because in your quest to get off the karmic merry-go-round of compromise and live the brilliant life you have come here to live, the most powerful tool you have at your disposal is your ability to distinguish emotion from natural sensation and give attention to one, not the other. This is worth repeating. The most powerful tool you have to help you live the brilliant life you want and deserve is to be able to distinguish natural sensation from emotion, and as much as possible, give your attention only to the natural sensations, not the emotions, that you feel in your body on a moment-to-moment basis. So let's first have a closer look at what natural sensation is. The human body, your body, is a body of God. It is a specific arrangement of firmaments of varying sizes and vibrations that communicate and cooperate with each other to produce the functioning organism that is you. We have covered this information thoroughly in previous sections, but the main point now is to see that well-being is your identification with the natural movement of energy in all these parts that make up your body, from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head, including all the internal structure and organs in between. Accordingly, it is the intended and healthy experience of life in the cells of your body and then in the atoms that constitute those cells. The feeling is an all-inclusive movement of energy throughout your entire body that registers to your brain via the nervous system as the ground state sensation of well-being. Arising from this ground state of well-being are all kinds of energies that are designed to move the body in certain ways. Most of them are subtle and to a large degree innate in the psyche of a species, like the inner promptings that move an animal to find food, nurture the young, take rest, or enjoy play. There are other energies that register more intensely in the body, and these include, quite specifically, the energy of sex and the energy of pain. Both these are powerful forces that spike temporarily to ensure the survival of a species. For example, a body in a natural state does not live in a constant state of pain. It is only when the organism is physically hurt that pain registers, and this is designed as a protective mechanism. From pain, behavioural change can occur. The experience of pain evolves or summons a response from the organism, and this allows it to behave differently next time under the same circumstances. Eventually, an instinctive behaviour emerges in the species whereby it has an alertness to specific dangers. Under threat from those dangers, powerful energies, materializing as adrenaline and cortisol, flood the body and move it to act accordingly. Similarly, an animal does not live in a state of constant sexual alertness, interest, or willingness. Sexual energy is a powerful force that arises under the appropriate conditions through the release of dopamine and oxytocin into the body. This release of energy moves bodies together for the obvious and original purpose of reproducing and perpetuating the species. This is interesting and important information to contemplate because it helps us understand ourselves better with respect to these energies. Broadly speaking, it is this sexual impulse and desire to connect or engage with another body that has now become an energy that we associate with romantic love, and it is the avoidance of pain that has become associated with the energy of fear. The natural sensations of well-being begin with the simple joy of being, of fun, play, enthusiasm, and even faith, to mention a few more descriptors that can help point you to its reality. They are feelings that extend all the way from simply feeling good to the deepest and highest sensations of bliss or ecstasy. It is possible to get a sense of these higher sensations by considering the energy of orgasm. First, and to help make the distinction, the feeling of orgasm is not an emotion. It is a deep state of well-being or joy in the body, and because most people are vastly separated from any such depth of sensation in their normal lives, yet either consciously or unconsciously seek it, this is one reason why people can become obsessed with sex. It is a striving to reconnect with something deeper, more real, the divine. So, well-being is concerned with the natural and intended continuous flow of energy through the body, and the feeling is wonderful. However, this feeling cannot be fully experienced or experienced for too long while ever emotional energy is in the mix, which unfortunately is the case for most people most of the time today. Emotions are feelings that arise and build as a function of the self, pulling on the natural flow of energy through the body. This pull and resultant distortion of energy is the cause of all dysfunction on the planet, from personal unhappiness through disaster and war to environmental degradation and climate change. It is essential that collectively we come to this understanding before there is any chance for healthy, enduring change to occur on this planet. And it all begins with you. Only you, the individual, can come to know this. And then, as each person comes to their own knowing, the collective awareness will be there. Let's now have a deeper look at why this is so and how it all works. Remember, the self has come to be by way of our ability to think. Before we had the ability to think, we were like the rest of the animals and lived in the here and now of every moment. We were timeless and selfless. And so, the sensation of well-being relates directly to this natural state of being. And you will know this from your own experience. Whenever you feel good, it is because you are relatively present in life. That is, you are not caught up in any emotion that thinking has generated within you. For example, fear, anxiety, frustration, or guilt. Humans have been developing the ability to think now for some 70,000 years, and today we are so good at it that it seems an inseparable functionality of our existence, and something that is impossible for us to stop doing or detach from. In this sense, thinking is a force of its own that has a hold over us to the degree that we cannot separate ourselves from it. This is a powerful realization to come to, For some people, just the mention that thinking has a hold over them and not being able to control or direct it is the cause of their unhappiness can make them panic and react. This is because the thinker in them is the self, an entity of its own accord, and it knows that for a person to come to realise what we are talking about here spells the end of its existence. Therefore, it will, like any living entity, fight for its survival. However, you will now have a better understanding of the fact that the self or ego in you is a real but phony entity, and it must dissolve, or at least stand well aside if you are to be happy and free. We're now starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the reality of healing and transformation. Essentially, there are only two motivating forces operating in a human being, and any authentic healing or transformative process that you might come by will be working with resolving or aligning these forces within you somehow. The first force or energy is the real you, the truth of what you are, and the expression of that through your body as the who you are in the world. In this place, you are aligned with the natural sensations of well-being in your body, and you have a healthy and powerful relationship with thought and feeling through which it serves you and the world. The second energy is your self, or ego, which is an entity that is formed over time from borrowed, or we could even say robbed, energy from your natural state, from God. Its feeling state is emotion, and it is an energy that must keep you thinking in order that it can sustain itself. As I have said over and over throughout this work and will continue to say until such time that this entity has been thoroughly dissolved, the self is the cause of all problems on earth. It is a living entity that has a hold over humanity, and it sustains itself through making you think and feel emotion in your body. However, through the work of countless souls and spirits over many thousands of years, this entity is now beginning to lose its grip, and a new awareness is emerging. The evidence for this is in the unprecedented global and personal challenges we are facing, the rise of disruptive technologies and questioning of the status quo, and the equivalent increase in healers and teachers across the planet to help in this incredible transition. Let's now look at how emotion arises from the interaction between the energies of you and yourself operating in your body. As a modern human being today, you will be very aware of the fact that you can easily think about, imagine, and believe in all kinds of things that are not in your moment of experience. You can be wherever your body is now, but you can also leave the reality of that sense-perceived moment and enter the conceptual world to think about where you might like your body to be in the future. Similarly, you can choose to believe in ideas or images from the past rather than accept the reality of what you are sensing and experiencing in the moment. This imagining and believing occurs in the subconscious through the brain, which is the interpreter of your reality. Thus, as far as your brain is concerned, there is little difference between what is interpreted in the moment through the senses and what is generated in your head as a future, past reality or possibility. They are all pictures of some kind of reality and therefore can and do generate all kinds of feelings and responses associated with them. To demonstrate the point, if somebody in an unhappy situation in life, perhaps somebody working in a job they hate, begins thinking about and hoping for a better future, the imagining might help generate a better feeling temporarily, but the act of doing so can pull on the reality of the moment to create a tension. This distortion of energy may then register as an excitability or longing for the conjured reality. Or it might go the other way to create a resignation to the idea that life might not ever be any different, that it is just not possible for a person like them to experience anything better because they are somehow limited or unworthy. Either way, coming back from this kind of projecting to the reality of one's life circumstances can then register as dissatisfaction or depression. This may be immediate, or more often it may be delayed, which makes it extremely difficult to see the relationship between projecting and unhappiness. The feelings of excitability, longing, resignation, unworthiness, dissatisfaction, and depression that we have identified here in this example are all emotions, and the energy they create lingers in the subconscious to become an additional part of the ego. This effectively adds to the originating unhappy state. Another example of how the thinking self pulls on the energy of the moment to distort and become an emotion is when we project into the future about a perceived fear or difficult situation. The fearful projection will be due to its association or similarity to an event that is the same or similar in nature to something unpleasant that has happened to us in the past. Because of the pain associated with the original event, a natural response has been formulated to deal with it in the future, which would be to avoid the situation altogether. But if the thinking self energizes this image by continually focusing on it, the brain thinks it is real and consequently releases adrenaline and/or cortisol so that the body can take effective action. The body is now ready to act in response to something, but that something isn't actually happening. So what then happens to this energy? What happens is that the energy turns into something else, and that something else is fear, a powerful emotion born from the avoidance of perceived future pain. The fear generated from any such event registers in the body alongside the evolved response to the situation and becomes a substantial energy field that lingers in the intermediate world once again, just like the substance of memory. And just as memories become the thoughts of ego, the substance of this fearful emotional energy field, we could say, becomes its body. These ideas are discussed in great detail by the well-known spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle in his books The Power of Now and A New Earth, which are well worth reading. But fear itself is not fear per se. It is just powerful energy. In its right place, it is the energy to act for survival. If the energy is summoned as the result of imagining alone, it cannot go anywhere, cannot release naturally, and therefore cannot do anything else but distort to become this lingering energy field of emotion. Fear is a master emotion that feeds many others, for example, anxiety, dread, angst, or panic. The emotional energy field or body that is generated through imagining is not one born of fear and its associated negative emotions alone. It is generated equally by excitability, but as being excited is seen as a more acceptable positive emotion in society today. In fact, it is encouraged in so many ways, it goes unnoticed for the greater part. Nonetheless, the behaviour of imagining better realities floods the body with powerful energies, materializing as serotonin and/or dopamine, but as that energy is not relevant to the situation at hand, there is a mismatch that then registers as a feverish vibration of emotion called excitability. Any and all future inputs that occur from either fear or excitement about the future gather and feed this growing emotional body, giving it increasing strength and power to influence the behaviour and experiences of a person in their lives. These invasive, lingering energy fields are basically toxic in the body, and left unchecked, they can build and spiral out of control to create a very confusing, unhappy and unhealthy existence. Why else do you think it is that disease, both physical and mental, is an ever-increasing problem in the world today? Similarly, by the same mechanism through which you can project into the future, you can also reflect upon the past. When you think and dwell upon something bad or upsetting that has happened, this activates the response or emotion associated with it. The memory and emotional body then pulls on the energy of the moment, distorting it to register as additional emotions that we might call anger, vengeance, guilt, resentment, or remorse. These feelings then feed and mix with the original emotion, and together they can, once again, lead to an unhealthy state of mind and being. Have you noticed that when you begin to think about something bad and feel the emotion it activates, it gathers a momentum of its own, activating more thoughts that then feed the disturbance within you? This is a dynamic that occurs not only with bad thoughts about the past either. You might think about something good in your experience, perhaps thoughts about the good times you have had or the good old days when things were better, and you might then end up in a place similar to the first example of projecting into the future, wishing things were different to how they are now. Another way in which emotion arises, which is almost the opposite way to that which we've been talking about so far, but completely related, is when you are being prompted from within to move in some way by the real you, but yourself resists by way of its beliefs that contradict this deeper inner prompting. This registers as doubt or resistance, and it's another version of the distortion that arises from a difference between what the real you and yourself want. The array and subtlety of emotions that can arise and the way in which they operate in the human body are vast, and it is not possible, or indeed even the purpose of this work, to explore them in any more detail. What is important to see and understand is that emotions are feelings generated from the energy and existence of ego pulling on the now, from wanting, or even not wanting, this moment to be different to what it is. Emotion is the feeling aspect of the pseudo-state that is ego, and so in your quest to be free and enjoy a functional, brilliant life, you must learn to recognize or discern emotion from well-being. To generate or give your attention to emotion is to feed the ego and perpetuate the existence of a world that can never serve you. To find and feel the sensation of well-being in your body is to acknowledge what is natural, true, and divine, and therefore help generate a life and a world that works. Feeling good is feeling God, and it is the name of the game. Everything then flows and works from this place in the way that it has been designed to do so. But it is a state of being, not a concept, something to believe in or aspire to, or even something to disbelieve in and argue against. It is a state of being that can only ever be lived and experienced for it to be known and effective. Can you feel any of this right now? Please go in and check. Close your eyes. Slow your breathing. And put your attention inside your body to feel what is going on in there. Look for the good feeling of well-being within you. I will remind you often throughout the remainder of the work to do this, because this is the reality of what we are talking about and endeavouring to achieve. You must learn to feel what is good within you as often as possible, until the time comes that this state is so strong that nothing else, emotion as we have been defining it, can dwell there. To do this is to set yourself free, to return home to the truth of your being. In the next section, we will talk more about the nature of ego, what it looks like, and how it behaves to sustain itself in the world today.